Hello, Mizzo here with a long overdue video about feedback, speech one, speeching in general. You can tell this is a current video instead of an old one because my hair is long and many different colors, and we're in this office. Anyway, thank you so much for your patience with me. It has been a couple of weeks and not necessarily all bad, but just a lot. Um, so I've been emailing you about logistics and whatnot, and I will continue to do so. But this video is inspired by um, uh, grading and reading the topic sheets and the library worksheets, and then if anybody posted questions, we didn't get many questions. Um, I have two sections of this online, and so I'm making this one video for both of you because there were a lot of crossovers. So one section didn't have any questions, and one I think only had one or two questions. On the discussion board, uh, we'll have a separate video that just reaffirms about the discussion board, right? But so this is some of this might even be repeats. So if you've been steadily watching all the material each week, some of this might sound repetitive. I'm going to try to do different examples, but hearing it in context of the stuff you've now learned. So after doing the topic sheet, after doing the library sheet, while you're trying to practice speech one, might hit different, as the cool kids say. Uh, okay, so a lot of you and this is not uncommon. It's a little bit easier for me to interpretive dance the differences between informative speaking and persuasive speaking when I'm in person, but especially online it's just challenging, partially because there's just nothing that is completely informative. There's all of it has some level of influence, right? And so it's muddy, and what you're trying to do is have it sound and feel informative. That's why I came up with this. So hopefully you've seen the video. If not, go watch the informative video. I won't tell anyone that you haven't watched it yet. So this is like how I know that I'm being informative. But I think that's even still hard for some people. So a lot of you had um, thesis sentences, especially in your topic worksheet, that were persuasive or a claim. And even though there's a question that addresses that, it's like you just can't hear the difference, which no shade, no tea. If you're new to this, you're learning, and it's challenging. Like, there are still people at the master's level or who've been doing this a long time that still have a hard, I mean, because it's subjective and you're always trying to feel it out. So let me give you some tips and some suggestions. I'm not using anybody's stuff verbatim. If I'm using your topic example, it's possible other people had it too. Um, uh, if I was going to use somebody's specific thing, I always ask consent first. So, but just some general things, and I'm pulling from some topics people are doing. Um, so pay so the so uh, pay attention to tricky words. So one person or so a couple of people had the phrase uh oh, I just had it and I didn't write it down, of course, because I'm confident in my memory, which after I had the baby I should get less confident in that. um Basically the phrase of um shoot I'm gonna double time and look it up while I talk to you. So we'll come back to that one. Any type of value word. So best, um, negative, negative impacts. So I mean, you can inform on the negative impacts of something. Absolutely. So like the negative impacts of lead poisoning. Sure, right? Um, but then you also, so some things, right? So like there are no positive impacts of lead poisoning. There are positive impacts of lead, right? So that might be a factor. Um, but like steroids, so that this topic isn't popular anymore. Thank goodness, because I was over it. One of my least favorite ones to talk about. But people would talk about steroids and it would all be framed negatively. So, impacts of steroids, but it would all be negative, and steroids are bad for you. And they were informing, they thought they were informing, but it was just this barrage of like negative information. And what they would never talk about is medical steroids. Like, how many of you use a nasal spray? That's steroids. Like, how many of you have a medicine that you know is steroids? Or if anybody used, like, there's a topical cream I've used for a specific skin disease I have that flares up every few years, and then that's a steroid, right? So if you've got something, so the big one here is social media. It's like, and so like if I'm going to do the mental health of social media, it's like that I would guess people are framing negatively. But how many of you love getting responses, and how many of you like the connection you're able to have on social media improves your mental health? Now, for a lot of us, it probably also can be negatively impacting to our mental health. But like if you're going to talk about the negatives of social media, you also have to talk about like the Arab Spring and how like there was a revolution run solely on social media because they like this was a way that they could communicate that wasn't able to be stopped by these oppressive governments, right? Or like, oh my gosh, the fact that my kid can just like, now I'm more into technology, but can just see her grandparents that live far away. That's amazing. Like, the literally couldn't have happened when I was young, right? Um, so if you're gonna write in an informative, you have to be laying out these multiple perspectives, and especially if it's like like topics like drunk driving or plastic, where it seems like nobody is for drunk driving, but we are for drinking culture. Like it would be weird if we started to take out beer from everything in Wisconsin, festivals, baseball. Quick side note: when my partner first went, he grew up in Minnesota, but his parents moved to Wisconsin like when he went to college. So he's familiar with Wisconsin, and then we moved here in 2016. And so the first time he went to a physician here in Wisconsin, and my partner's in public health, the physician had the questionnaire and was asking him how much alcohol do you drink per week? And so Matthew doesn't drink hardly at all, so did like an estimate, and his was like not per week, it was per year. And then the next question was, how much beer do you drink per week? And Matthew was like, oh, what? And apparently they have found in Wisconsin especially that people don't include beer with alcohol. Hilarious, right? And tragic. Do you see what I'm saying? So like you can't you have to say like, what, basically tell me why this is a problem. That's part of the information. So like, yeah, tell me about plastic and pollution, and yes, give me stats on the plastic island in the ocean. Look this up if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's horrifying. And all the terrible things, but also tell me how great it is that I don't have to go to a gas station and put Mountain Dew in my hands, right? Like, and show me what like the innovations plastic has done, and that kind of thing, right? So, make sure you're coming from multiple perspectives, and be very aware of certain types of words, right? So you can't inform me about how to get better sleep, okay? Because the minute that you start to like give me any kind of big value, right? That's when you're telling me my business. Okay? So you cannot inform me of the best ways, of the best way to do something, because that's an argument, that's a perspective, that's persuasive. Where it can get messy. So like somebody somebody used the phrase specifically, significant discrepancy, which is such a beautiful phrase, right? And I remember their topic, but so like if I'm doing the wage gap and I'm saying, there is a significant discrepancy in how people are paid, then that's true. But specifically, I said, there's a significant discrepancy in how men are paid versus how women are paid. That is true. That is provable, factual. But you start to hear how it starts to sound persuasive. And so a lot of and I put this in the comments, right? But a lot of the stuff, if you can ground it in something, so you can't tell me the how to get better sleep, but you can inform me on theories of sleep. You can tell me the theories that people say, about how to have better nutrition. You can you can inform me on what is there, but you can't tell me something. You have to ground it in something tangible. Informative speaking is finding. Information gathering, finding. You're not asserting anything. You're not adding anything. So check if you start to feel like your topic is a claim, start to check if you can, what I call, back up. So instead of doing, that there's a discrepancy between how men and women are paid, you would just do, you could, so wage gap is a pretty tangible topic, but let's say you're doing like representation. So instead of doing, like representation in sports or movies, and you're saying, there's a significant discrepancy in how much men are represented versus how much women are. Well, instead of, while that is true and factual, or Congress, right? Hey, while that is true, just pull back to representation. Just pull back to media coverage. You don't even have to like add in, men versus women or this versus that, because this is the great part about information. It speaks for itself. So if your topic is representation in movies, you'll just find that information and the discrepancy will be very obvious, right? If I start showing how women are talked about in sports coverage, for example, or in, we're having an election right now with one male and one female. And if you don't want to talk about the election, and this is not me indoctrinating you, and if you want to talk about politics or you want me to tell you how I'm going to vote or whatever, come to my office, sign up, we'll do virtual, would love to hang out. This isn't about that. This is about how there's a meme that goes around that says something about if Kamala Harris had, and then it's just details about Donald Trump. So it's like this many wives, this many kids, this many whatever. And that is not me saying a value on that, right? But the meme points out that the coverage about her, she already, like, there's Fox News coverage of like calling her the Huck 2 girl. Yes, I know what that reference is, and I'm just citing it, right? I just found this, and all sorts of just like that she slept her way to the top. And this is like, she has a long-term partner and stepkids and like, a pretty like base, like she's not in a throuple, right? Like she's on OnlyFans as far as we know, like the was it chancellor of one of the university systems. Look that up. That came out around Christmas. Again, just telling you information here. So does that make sense, right? That like you could just find that information because information speaks for itself. And so then you won't need to like really point out the specific. Save that for your argument. Save that. Set us up. What do we need to know? What do we need to know That's what this speech is before you can then get us to your argument. That's one of the easiest ways to think of this speech, is especially for many of you know where you want to go. You want to know the argument or the change you're making. Now back up and say, okay, what is it that we need to know um, in order for that argument to make sense, in order for me to make that argument, really in order for us to have that conversation. Because like I've said before, you're joining a conversation. You're not inventing anything. And this is really you giving us sort of the highlights of this state, group, national, federal, global conversation, whatever this is, right? People are talking about this. People got opinions about this. People are doing stuff about this, right? Even in your second speech, you're not, I mean, the odds of you, I don't know that I've ever heard someone who sometimes people have a specific thing they do, but it's very rare that someone invents something new, right? Like you're looking as to like where to hitch your wagon, like where we need to put our time and energy to make change, right? I'm looking up the phrasing that I wanted to make sure to address. Well, one is like anytime you're saying should, right? That's when the hands come down. Should, um, trying to find this, and I thought it was right here. Does this make sense as I'm looking for this? I hope this is making sense. I had one more. Checking my notes here. Did all that. So then I thought I had another phrasing that was like they get to or have to, but it sounds sneaky. It sounds like it should be informative. Got it, found it. It's like if like landlords are getting away with not being responsible for this, right? So it's like, I want to inform you about how landlords are getting away with having lead in their pipes and dumping that on the tenants. That is technically true, but getting away with that's pretty biased, right? So instead, right, your topic is landlord rights. And that is going to be, the information is going to be really easy there, because if you start looking into what the Wisconsin legislation has allowed landlords to do and how they just keep repealing regulations, right? Or anytime any type of regulations. So like you'll read something and it'll say sugar free, and then you'll look at the ingredients and it'll say sucrose. Sucrose is sugar. So any type of zero sugar, Propel, everything's got sucrose in it. Believe me, I just gave up added sugar beverages and can't drink any of it. I am currently drinking sparkling water with pineapple in it, because pineapple has sugar, but it's not added. It's just pineapple, right? It's medium, I'm going to be honest. The limes I tried were better. And if you want to bring me a sparkling water flavor, just be prepared for my face to do this, because I've tried the only one. Waterloo, I tried a brand or a flavor, and I drank half of it, which was very impressive. Very exciting. In a year, I'll probably love it because my taste buds will change. Waiting. Okay, we're on like month and a half, so I'm doing good. Okay, so the final sort of thing that I'll send you off is another thing that can help informative speaking is definitions. So a lot of people will want to talk about social media, but they won't be inclusive of all social media, because Tumblr, which is anonymous and, sort of like the Wild West, or, like, is very different than YouTube, which is very different than LinkedIn, which are both all very different than Facebook or Instagram. So sometimes people want to talk about like the impacts of social media, but they mean Facebook and Instagram. They're not including Snapchat. They're not including LinkedIn, which is, you know, or TikTok, right? Like because these function so differently. If you want to talk about a specific platform or two, or even like, so like YouTube is primarily a content sharing, right? And then you can comment, there's social media aspects to that. But like Instagram is content sharing. I guess like, to me, I guess Facebook then, right? Facebook to me is more about the connection. You're using real names instead of, user. um, uh, my like name from the late 90s when we first got email was like Tootsie Pop 22 or something, which was like just a candy and my favorite number or something. But of course, eventually it was like, ooh, I should change that. That sounds not how I mean it. Right? Like sounds sexy and I was 17 or whatever. So, if you say education, make sure you're telling us whether you mean higher ed or K through 12. Like, don't make assumptions that we're going to follow you. Even like, yeah. So basically it's any time. I mean, steroids would be like I talked about that earlier, but that would be another example here of like you want to really make sure I'm in the area and that you're not assuming what I mean and that I'm not using a one word to mean something else. So I'm not using social media to really just mean Instagram. Does that make sense? That has a fancy rhetorical name that I know and could remember if I tried hard enough because I am a rhetorical scholar. But doesn't matter right now. And then the other big thing is framing. So think like, what window am I looking out, right? So if I'm looking out my very messy office window, like the sun is shining, it's shady and whatever, but like if this had any kind of tint on it, it would look different. Think like sunglasses, right? If I'm looking at the world and then I put sunglasses on. So what will happen is, and this happened, we started my in-person class speeches, and this is really common. You're technically giving me information, but you have set it up in a bias or persuasive or claim frame. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. So, someone was talking about mosquito spray and like how basically how it's bad for amphibians. And that was the setup. And it's like that mosquito spray is bad for amphibians. It's like, well, that's a claim. That's persuasive. Because you're leaving out, right, like the benefits of mosquito spray, and because listing the benefits doesn't disregard the harms. They both exist, right? And then it's a value discussion of like which one we value versus not. And all of the information they were giving was informative. It was about how the spray affect and like that it like melts their skin off. It was so gross, right? And like what it does to their habitat. Like all of it was informative, but it was set up in like this is bad for amphibians instead of the topic being like impacts of mosquito spray, both positive and negative, right? And you can see how that would apply to just numerous topics. But really, really be aware of your setup, your intro and setup, because if you're setting us up in any kind of claim or involved, hands-on, telling me my business, you might be giving me all this really great information about sleep. But if the frame is, I'm going to inform you or maybe a better one is stress, like I'm going to inform you why stress is bad. You can't inform me why stress is bad. You can inform me on the impacts of stress, But also, like, there are some arguments that say, like, we could certainly find some experts that say having some stress often um, motivates performance. So I have a brain disorder, and it is very difficult for me to plan ahead. But as soon as the deadline is close enough, the stress hits. It makes my brain do a thing I can't do otherwise. So, I mean, do you see what I'm saying? That, like, really, really try to move away from any type of, um, you know, frame, like a persuasive, biased frame. Um, Ways to check this: talk to a friend, talk to um, like run it by your dorm mates, email me, right? Now that we've extended speeches a bit, like, um, come meet with me. I've got time Monday and Tuesday, and I'm happy to do any kind of phone or video this weekend. I think my big plan is to clean the basement. I know, very exciting. um, and then I'm going to email this, but somebody asked if they could have more than 3 references. Oh my gosh, please have more references. Honestly, if you're doing the process that I've been leading you through these weeks in these videos, like, and with the articles in the book, you will probably have more than 3 sources. I don't like having a minimum amount of sources, but I do because it's a basic level course and that seems appropriate. um, uh, but like to have, like, basically people get really stressed out about the grade and the speech and they're nervous anyway. And so then having just like use enough sources, use a justified amount of sources is extra stress. So I have guidelines on each speech, but if you were, I mean, like, literally, a girl came to my office hours, and in less than 5 minutes, we had 10 sources. Now, she'd have to go through them and check them out and whatever, but like, I would bet she'd use at least half of them, if not more, because they're useful, not because she's required to. Remember, I'm trying to get you away from that K through 12 mindset of this is required, you're doing this because I told you to, instead of like you're critically thinking and how does this work, right? A quick note on citing is one way to help know when I need to cite and go listen to the source citation video, to know, like, to give credit and so that the person can use it, find it. Um, what's happening? Did you see those balloons? Did what happened? What just happened? There were balloons. That was amazing. Anyway, if you can't see that, you're gonna think I'm a crazy person, but hopefully you can. Anyway, uh, ooh, that was very distracting. That was so exciting. Oh, when you're citing, one way to know about, like, if I am referencing and the material and citing enough is can I go, how do you know that? So I love to tell the story about a few semesters ago, the girl that came in and she had major background in speech. Um, uh, and she came in like 2 hours before the speech and was like, I've had a rough week. My mental health is shot. I've done nothing. And I was like, okay, like, now we just do the same process that ideally you do in a week. Well, you'll do it in 2 hours. And so I sent her to a room, reminded her how to do the fast version of this, and she rocked it because she's got a bunch of training. And when you get good at those skills, you can do them fast. She got an A. She rocked it, and it was only later when she pointed out she didn't actually cite any sources. Like, the sources she used, she did not cite them. And I very rarely miss stuff like that anymore because I've been doing this so long. But she cited, so like she was talking about art and AI. So she cited an exhibit from the 80s or 90s. So she cited the exhibit, so I had enough to know what it was. But she didn't need to cite there. I'm doing something and it's making tell me you can see it. I have no idea what I'm doing. That makes me kind of want to wave around to see what else I can get to do. Um uh she mentioned like a specific artist, but she didn't mention the article it came from. And another student, I think I would have caught that, like, with less training, less experience, but the way she was crafting it, I didn't find myself asking, how do you know this? She was giving me enough of that to give credit. And so that's why it's tricky. I can't tell you just say the author, just say this, right? Like it's all about crafting and weaving those sources in. But one way to check is like, do I like have your roommates listen and have them write down every time they think, how do you know that? um yeah. So I think those are the big things. If I'm going to try to do some more videos in the coming weeks about certain things, but hopefully this will really help with these speeches and things that I wrote a lot on people's work. And if you don't have grades for your topic and library stuff, I am so close to being done, and I'm hoping not to go to sleep tonight until I finish. We'll see, or at very least have any fun until I finish. Okay, have a beautiful day. Message me if you need anything. I would love to help, and I'm gonna get all the peer review stuff set up so that it's ready to go for next week. Okay, have a beautiful day. Bye.